register for that, for the mega event. I would, we have extended this 4-day workshop to 6 days. So on the next Friday, Saturday, you will be finding that we have also have 2 days GST program. So those who have not yet registered can register for the next Friday and Saturday. Subham, he is a chartered accountant, company secretary also. He was among the top 10 ranker from the St. Xavier's College. He has cleared his professional exam, all professional exam in the first attempt. He is currently a partner in S. Khaitan and Associates. He is deliberating lectures in many of the study circles also. And as part of that, we should invite young members and should develop the second line of speakers. We thought that we should have we should invite the young members also. So we have invited today Subham. Thank you, Subham, for accepting our invitation. I would request sir to please come forward. And sir, what's your name, sir? Yes, sir. Please, please come forward and offer a bouquet on behalf of EIRC to Subham, please. Thank you. It's all over to Subham, please.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I'd like to thank C.A. Nitesh Moore, sir, for giving me this opportunity to present this topic in front of you. Now, we have been hearing a lot of things about GST in the last couple of days. A lot of political statements coming in, whether GST can come in or not come in. So, 6 months back, we used to hear that, can GST come in India? At that time, we used to get different answers. Some people said that it will come, but there might be a delay. But of late, the question has been, if GST comes in, can it be delayed beyond the next year? Okay, I have a very simple answer to that. Last year, when GST bill was, in fact this year, when Constitutional Amendment Bill was passed and the Constitutional Amendment Act was in vogue, it was notified that on 16th of September 2016, this act will come in place. And the existing taxes can only continue up to a period of 1 year. That means beyond 16th September 2017, if the government does not bring in GST, the existing taxes will be withdrawn. That means India will become a tax-free country, in other words, if GST doesn't kick in by next year. That means we have to be very sure that GST will be coming in next year no matter what happens. Whether it's 1st April, 1st July, that's a different story, but it definitely is going to kick in from the next year. Now, it presents a very big opportunity to us professionals. How? When tax audit had come in, at that time there was a huge surge in the number of people who were practicing in income taxes. And today also we find those people are still continuing in this field. When GST comes in, almost all the provisions of income taxes will be similar to what we have in in the income taxes. So in indirect taxes and income taxes, provisions will be overlapping in a lot of ways. We'll be having the concept of TDS, TCS, audit, everything will be coming in from the income tax as well. That means it presents a very big opportunity for us. And as we have been hearing a lot of times, there are 37 returns and possibly 49 or 61 returns, which we'll be discussing in some time. But there will be a lot of returns, and in the beginning there will be a lot of teething problem. So it presents an opportunity. If we start gearing up from today itself, we professionals can actually capture this market and make sure that the advocates or the other professionals who are actually practicing in this field don't actually stand a chance in front of us because of our accounting background and everything. So with this premise, I would like to begin my topic on registration. Now, why is registration required? The first and basic reason is it gives us a legal recognition in the eyes of the law. That means the government can know that this is the amount of taxes that we have paid, these are the amount of returns that we have filed, it belongs to us. Tomorrow if the government wants to come and see if there are any issues with our records or anything, they can catch us on the basis of our registration itself. So it presents us as an opportunity for us to be able to present ourselves in front of the government. Also, it helps in determining the jurisdiction of the assessee. That means whether an assessee should be administered by the center or the state, or which officer would be administering the person would again be determined by the person, by the fact where he is registered under GST. Now, except composition scheme, which we'll be talking about in some time, GST registration will also help us in collecting taxes and passing on the credit to the recipient. So until unless we are registered, we are not allowed to pass on the input tax credit to any other person. Also, we are expected to take input tax credit in GST. For that, we would be needing registration. Input tax credit again is a concept which is very prevalent in today's laws as well, where a part of the taxes paid on the inward supplies can be used for payment of your outward supplies. So that again will be there under GST, because GST is similar to what we have under VAT or under SENVAT, where we have a value addition system. Now, what is a taxable person and how is it relevant to registration? A person who is registered or liable to be registered under GST is called a taxable person. That means any person who is liable to be registered under GST would be called a taxable person. And every taxable person is supposed to pay taxes. So unless we are registered, we legally cannot pay taxes, and the government can come after us as to why are we not paying taxes. Also under GST there's a concept called state-wise registration. That means every state where our functions are, we need to take a registration, a separate registration. That means if we have operations in 29 different states, we should be having registrations in those 29 different states. Multiple registrations can also be obtained in case of multiple business verticals. That means, for example, if I am HUL, I have 2 or 3 different divisions. One, it comes to FMCG, or the other might be construction. All these divisions can have a different administrative body which will be governing those divisions. So it might be difficult for the body to control two business verticals at the same time. So there might be a decentralized control by the administration of the company. In that case, what they can do is they can opt for separate registrations for the different business verticals, even though they lie within the same state. So even there can be more than 29 registrations if a person opts for having a different business vertical registration. This one, a person is to be regarded as a distinct person for each registration in case of multiple registrations. So no matter how many registrations we have, for every registration we'll be considered as a different person altogether. That means if I am making a supply to my other unit which is in the other state which is having a different registration, it will be considered as if I am liable to GST and I need to pay GST on that as well. Two establishment of a person in different states are to be treated as establishments of distinct persons. So if a person has establishment in 2 different states, those will be treated as establishment of 2 different persons altogether. This is similar to what we have done here, but there are two separate provisions given here in respect of a taxable person. Now, types of registration. What are the provisions when it comes to registration where we would be liable for registration? First would be a normal registration, the other would be a composition dealer registration. Under normal registration, we can have three different kinds of registration. Either because our turnover has crossed a certain limit, we might have to take a turnover based registration, or we might have to take a registration without any threshold, compulsory registration, which will be without any threshold. That means whatever our income is, whatever our expenses are, doesn't matter. If we lie within this, we have to take a registration no matter what. Voluntary registration. That means even though we are not liable for registration, we may opt for it for different reasons. Might be we need input tax credit of a particular amount. We might be needing a refund of a particular amount. So we might take even a voluntary registration. Composition dealer has to take a registration on the basis of his turnover, which we'll be studying just a while. Before we get into turnover based registration, we need to understand this terminology called aggregate turnover. What are the things that are included in the aggregate turnover? What are the things that are excluded in this aggregate turnover? Now, you might find that this definition is a little different from what you might have heard elsewhere, because this definition has come in not more than 4 or 5 days ago. Why do I say that? Because government had given a model GST law on June 14, 2016. At that time, the government had a certain definition for aggregate turnover. Now, based on the stakeholders' comments, suggestions, they have made certain changes to the model GST law. Now, this is the definition of aggregate turnover as per the new model GST law, which has been placed before the GST Council in its meeting today and tomorrow. So we might expect the law to get finalized in a few days or weeks once the GST Council approves it. But we do expect that it will be more or less in line with the revised GST law, because this has been finalized by the GST Council itself. Now, let's get into the definition of the aggregate turnover. Aggregate turnover includes all supplies, taxable supplies, okay, that means which are liable to tax. Exempt supplies, okay, that means it is exempt either through a notification or through a special order or anything. Exports, okay. Interstate supplies. Interstate supplies is also being included here separately to make sure that there is no dispute with regard to that. So even intrastate supplies and interstate supplies both are part of the aggregate turnover definition. But we have to be very careful that even though we are having a separate registration all over the country, we have to compute aggregate turnover on a country-wide basis. That means one PAN will be having a turnover which will be computed on an aggregate basis throughout the country. Also, supplies, whether they are provided on your own account or on behalf of someone, that means they are talking about an agent as well as a principal. So whatever happens, they need to include it within the aggregate turnover. That means even an agent who is supplying on behalf of the principal, if he is supplying or receiving goods on behalf of that principal, the amount will be included in the total aggregate turnover. Now, what are the things that are excluded from this? First, taxes which are charged under CGST, SGST and IGST. That means all the aggregate turnover is to be considered exclusive of taxes. If the taxes are included within the aggregate turnover, we need to exclude it. Value of inward supplies on which tax is payable on reverse charge basis. So even if we are liable to pay taxes on reverse charge basis, we won't be including it on our turnover. The person who is providing outward supplies will be including it in his turnover. The one who is receiving the inward supplies, even if he is paying on reverse charge, he'll still exclude that from the aggregate turnover definition. Now, supply by a job worker is to be included in the aggregate turnover of principal and not job worker. Now, I have written this section for a different reason. Now, there are certain conditions which are prescribed in this section, wherein a principal, if he clears his goods from his premises, he can clear it without payment of duty, only on satisfaction of certain conditions like taking permission from the commissioner and declaring it as an additional place of business and stuff like that. But until as these conditions are satisfied, supply by a principal to a job worker will be included. Only if these conditions are satisfied within this particular section, the turnover will exclude the supply made by a principal to the job worker. Now, turnover based registration. Aggregate turnover greater than 50 lakhs has to mandatory register under the normal provisions. If the aggregate turnover is between, there are two limits here, I'll just talk about that. Between this limit and 50 lakhs, in that case, he has an option to take either a composition dealer registration or a normal registration. If the aggregate turnover is less than this amount, 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, in that case, he has an option to take either voluntary registration or don't take a registration at all. It is his prerogative with regard to turnover less than 10 or 20 lakhs. Now, there are certain states which are considered to be special category states. If anybody is making a supply from those states, in that case, the aggregate turnover in excess of 10 lakhs has to take a registration. If in other states other than these states, only the aggregate limit will be more than 20 lakhs. Now my question is, for example, if I am supplying goods worth rupees 19 lakhs from West Bengal and only 2 lakhs from, let's say, Assam, in that case, do I need to take a registration?
Yes, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So, how many people for no?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. For example, I have a turnover of 19 lakhs from West Bengal and 2 lakhs from Assam. Do I need to take a registration?
Yes, if the interstate.
Okay. What if my turnover from West Bengal is 9 lakhs and from Assam it's 2 lakhs?
Yes.
So even a 1 rupee supply from any of these states, if the threshold exceeds 10 lakhs, even if you are making maximum supplies from the non-special category states, still you need to take a registration. Now, composition levy. Now this again might be a little different from what we have been studying for the last 6 months when the model GST law has kicked in. Better let's not get into that. I'll start afresh as to what and who can opt for composition levy. When it comes to a manufacturer, only in respect of certain goods other than notified goods, he can opt for composition levy. The percentage that he needs to pay will be minimum 2.5% of aggregate turnover. Now, why do I say minimum? Because it hasn't been prescribed in the law as to what will be the exact amount of percentage of turnover that a composition dealer needs to pay. Now, my question is this actually 2.5% or 5%?
5%.
This is essentially 5%. Why? Because this will be prescribed in the CGST law as well as the SGST law. That means minimum 5% of the aggregate turnover a manufacturer needs to pay taxes in the composition levy if he opts for it. Service provider, he's basically ineligible for composition levy. In any other case, let's say a trader, 1% of aggregate turnover. Now this again 1% is again 1% or 2%? Right. This again is 2%. Minimum 2% he needs to pay taxes in the composition scheme. Now what are the major features of composition levy? First condition in fact for composition levy is that the person is not allowed to make any interstate supplies. That means he cannot have a situation where the location of the supplier is in one place and the place of supply is in the other place. It necessarily has to be in the same state if he wants to opt for composition levy. Second, person should not be making supply through e-commerce operator required to collect TCS. That means he cannot make any online sales through Flipkart or Amazon or through any other e-commerce website. If he opts for it, he's basically disqualified from the composition scheme. Person making any supply of goods not leviable to tax. So, anybody who's making any kind of supply of goods which is not taxable under the law, in that case he cannot opt for composition scheme. All taxable persons having the same PAN should also opt for the scheme. If I have a limit, if I have, let's say, 5 different places from where I am making supplies, my aggregate turnover throughout the country is still less than 50 lakhs. I opt for composition scheme in all those 5 places. Now any one place I decide to pay under normal scheme. Now that is not allowed. What needs to happen is I need to make sure that I am paying taxes under composition scheme from all the places. Even one place cannot breach my composition scheme my composition levy. The person will neither collect nor be entitled to any input tax credit. That means he can neither collect tax, he cannot neither pass it on to anyone. That means he cannot avail input tax credit, nor the person who is actually buying from him can avail the input tax credit. So this essentially is a tax which is being paid on a gross basis rather than on a net basis. Permission will stand withdrawn from the day aggregate turnover exceeds rupees 50 lakhs. So the day your turnover exceeds this amount of 50 lakhs, the permission will be withdrawn and you need to pay under normal scheme. Now if the officer, PO means proper officer, now this term has been used a lot, so I have decided to use initials here. Basically it has been used at least 150 places in the entire law, because the dispute resolution mechanism hasn't still been finalized and who will administer us is yet to be finalized by the government. So they have written proper officer at a number of places. If proper officer has reason to believe that the person was ineligible but still opted for the scheme, then tax payable plus penalty. That means if a person was actually ineligible for composition scheme for any of these reasons, he actually had violated any of these reasons but still he was paying taxes under composition scheme, then whatever the difference is between the normal scheme, if he would have been paying under normal scheme, minus the taxes he's already paid under the composition scheme, the amount of tax payable plus the penalty equivalent to the tax payable will be levied on that person. So we have to be very careful when opting for the scheme and make sure that we are not violating any of these provisions, and also comprehend that if we will be violating that provisions in future or not. So that again is something which we have to be very careful about.
In this case, what happens to input credit?
So the input credit gets lapsed. Input credit will not be available. Compulsory registration without threshold. So these people are supposed to take registration without any threshold. No matter what their turnover is, they need to take a registration. Who all are these people? First is person making interstate taxable supplies. So anybody who's making an interstate supply is supposed to take registration no matter what. Casual taxable person. Now what is the meaning of this term? Casual taxable person. This basically means that if I am not having any place of business in a particular state, but still for a very short period in time, I need to make any supplies from that state. But I don't want to take registration in that state because I know that I won't be there for a very long period. For example, let's say I have an exhibition which I want to have in Assam, but I know that I won't be having any other supplies from Assam apart from this exhibition. And I am having this exhibition, let's say, only for 1 month. In that case, I can take a casual dealer registration and I'll be considered as a casual taxable person where I would be required to pay tax in advance based on my estimated liability over the next 1 month. And if I am a casual dealer, in that case I have to take a registration even if my supply is well below the aggregate turnover threshold. So no matter what happens, I need to take a casual dealer registration in that case.
In first case, you are
Yes, sir.
saying interstate.
Right, sir?
Interstate, suppose in case of auditor, I am asking chartered accountant having practice of say 6 lakh rupees
Right.
and makes one bill to Dhanbad or Bihar for audit, he has to get registration, even the single.
So, first of all, it is an interstate supply. If the Dhanbad person is actually
Yeah.
the one who's receiving the bill.
So even if the turnover, the professional fees are 1 lakh rupees.
Absolutely.
if they
Even if it's
single-
1
single-
rupee, then you have to
single
take a
bill,
registration.
registration.
Yes.
So there is no meaning of threshold here.
No.
So everyone has to register.
Anybody who's making an interstate supply. Persons required to pay under reverse charge. Now, reverse charge is there under service tax as well, so this is a familiar concept to all of us. But even in case of goods, this reverse charge concept is set to kick in. People buying from unregistered dealers are in future expected to pay taxes under reverse charge basis, similar to what we have in purchase tax today. Apart from this, there might be other reasons for paying taxes under reverse charge as well. But anybody who's paying a tax under reverse charge, no matter what his threshold is, he has to take a registration. Electronic commerce operator, if such services are provided through it. Can anybody give an example of an electronic commerce operator services provided through it? Right. It's actually Ola Uber. Now, this is a very new concept to the model GST law. Why? Because there was a concept called of aggregator, which is there under the service tax today and which was there under the model law as well. Now they have deleted this term called aggregator, where whenever a supply was made using the brand name of some other person, that was considered to be an aggregator. Now they have put it under e-commerce operator. An e-commerce operator, if any services are provided through that operator, that means Uber or Ola, anybody, the driver is not expected to take the registration, right? So the Uber and Ola, even if they are providing a 1 rupee service, in that case they need to take a compulsory registration here. Now, non-registered taxable person. What is the meaning of this term? It is basically similar to what we have in the casual taxable person, but the only difference is a person who is not a resident of a state is called a casual dealer, and a person who is not resident of a particular country is called a non-resident taxable person. Person required to deduct tax whether or not separately registered. So as I said, the TDS concept which was there in income tax is also going to come under GST. Certain notified persons, if their contract value is greater than 5 lakhs, then they need to deduct tax at the rate of 1% of the value of supply whenever any payment is to be made or any credit is made, similar to what we have in income tax. Anybody who is supposed to do this is supposed to take a registration no matter what. Person required to collect TCS whether or not separately registered. Now this right now is only consisting of e-commerce operator. So e-commerce operator is different from what we have here. Here we had talked about Uber and Ola. This e-commerce operator is actually talking about Amazon and Flipkart. So any seller who's making any supply through the e-commerce website, in that case, the seller also needs to take a registration, the e-commerce website also needs to take a registration. Both these people needs to take a registration even though they don't have any turnover. Person supplying on behalf of another person such as an agent. So an agent who is making supply on behalf of his principal, in that case, the agent, even if he has a zero amount of turnover, he still has to take a registration. Person supplying, I've already covered this one. Any seller making supplies through an e-commerce operator.
You just now said that the e-commerce operator, in the case of e-commerce operator, Flipkart as well as the website, both have to take.
Flipkart has to take a registration, and the person, the seller who's selling through that Flipkart website, has to take a registration.
This 20 lakhs is financial year or previous financial year?
Preceding financial, they have corrected this. Earlier they said in a financial year, now they have stated
And this
in the
goes
preceding
on
financial year.
yo-yo, or the first year I am having 20 lakhs, next year 18 lakhs.
Again, sir, we have to see the preceding financial year if it is exceeding the
every year
threshold.
you can go out and come
Absolutely, yes. Person supplying online information and database access or retrieval services from a place outside India to an unregistered person in India. Anybody who's providing download services on a chargeable basis, or any access of a website which is on a chargeable basis to any person unregistered, and it is provided by any person outside India, is said to be covered here, and they need to take a registration. And other persons, as may be specified, which is why they have kept the options open here, so that they can specify any other person who needs to take compulsory registration. Persons not liable to take registration. Who all are the people who are not required to take registration under the Act?
Just continuing with the previous example that the sir gave. Suppose the supply, the service of audit is done in another state.
Right,
but
sir.
the billing is done in this state.
Right.
Then what happens?
So again, this is a place of supply question. First of all, we need to see here what is the place of supply. The location of supply is very clear, which is I am in Calcutta, so the location of supply is very clear here. But in case of audit service, we need to see where the billing is done. If the billing is done to a party here itself, again we have to see the contract. Where is the service being provided? Where is the billing being done? Is it on a bill to ship to basis? There are a number of complications with regard to place of supply here, but I am considering a very simple example here, that you are saying that the person who is actually receiving the services is outside Calcutta.
Let's talk about bank audit.
Yeah.
Right, sir.
Say,
That
let's
is
talk
the
about
point.
bank audit. Bank audit, the billing is done in this state only to the regional head office.
Right, sir.
But we are going out of West Bengal, sometimes in Bihar, sometimes in Orissa. In that case, what happens?
So first of all, when I get into the place of supply, it'll just take 2 minutes for me to just summarize this. We'll discuss this in detail because this will actually involve a very big discussion. But place of supply states that if the person is registered, in that case, the one who's actually receiving the service, the location of the recipient will be the place of supply. So if your client is registered under GST, you have to see where is he receiving the service. If let's say he's receiving the services in, let's say, Dhanbad, then it's an interstate supply. Even if the billing is done here, no matter what, if he's receiving services at a place which is other than a registered place, the other registered place will be considered as the place of supply. So even if the billing is done here, the Dhanbad branch is not registered, still Dhanbad will be considered as the place of supply. This will be an interstate supply.
So in that case, irrespective of the turnover, we need to take registration.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Person exclusively engaged in supplying goods and or services not liable to tax. If I am exclusively engaged in providing non-taxable supplies, in that case I am not supposed to take any registration. Or an agriculturist, for an agriculture purpose, he does not need to take a registration even if he exceeds the threshold limit. Now this is very important, enrollment procedure for existing registrants. Now this has just started a couple of days ago for West Bengal. That means what happens now is we are supposed to supply data to the government. On the basis of this data, the government will be filling in all the required fields of the GST form. After that, the provisional registration would be converted into final registration in future. But the government is only asking for the data from us today in order to make sure it has all the requisite information, so that tomorrow when GST comes in, we don't have to get into the amendment of the data to get a final registration. So for West Bengal, this period has been specified as 30th of November to 15th of December. Between this time, all the VAT registrants are expected to enroll under GST. In that case, when GST comes in, they would be directly given a provisional registration certificate without any problems. So it's very important that all of us understand the process here, because we are supposed to carry out this process in the next 15 days. So VAT registrants, whoever has a VAT client or himself is VAT registered, please listen to this process carefully. Even the ones who are having service tax registration, this process will start in, I think, in January. They haven't specified the date, but it is expected to start in January. So it is very important that the process of enrollment is clearly understood. Now, State VAT Department is required to communicate the provisional ID and password. There will be a provisional ID which is similar to the GSTIN number, which will be communicated to us. And on the basis of this provisional ID, we are supposed to take a registration. How is this provisional ID going to be communicated to us? In case of WB VAT specifically, it can be retrieved from dealer's profile page. If we go to the WBcom website and log in into the dealer's profile, we'll be getting an access code and a provisional ID. This provisional ID and access code is required for your login into the GST portal. So you will access the GST portal, create a new username and password on the basis of this provisional ID and password from the VAT website. And also you need to make sure that your mobile number and your email ID both are correctly updated. We have been hearing from the past few days that the VAT department has been asking for our mobile number and our email ID for the past few days, just to make sure that data stays updated. This is the precise reason they have been doing it. So what happens is, once you log into the GST portal, you will be required to enter the OTP which will be received on your mobile number and your email ID. And once you do that, you will be able to create a username and a password. Now log into the GST portal. And once we see the form which is required to be filled there for migration to GST, certain fields will be auto-populated, like the legal name of the business, the trade name, which is similar to what we have in VAT, PAN number, state, all these things will be pre-filled. You cannot change these fields. If there is any issue with regard to these fields, you need to contact the VAT department or make an online change as may be necessary, depending on the field there's an issue of. Sorry. Now, once these fields are auto-populated, you need to fill up the enrollment application and whatever business details are required over there, you need to fill those up. And the necessary
business details.
Yeah, I'll just talk about that here. These needs to be filled there. Whatever fields are there, we need to fill that up. Now we'll specifically talk about the specific heads which needs to be filled with regard to login into the GST portal. First is the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction will be similar to what we have under our VAT. So the same jurisdiction we need to fill up in our GST application.
Even though we might be having other registrations also.
We will be just talking about that as well. So just give me 2 minutes with regard to this slide. We'll be just talking about that as well. Other existing registrations. So if I as an assessee have different registrations for VAT and for central excise, service tax, I might be having a lot of registrations. I need to specify each of those registrations here. Now the government needs to make sure that my VAT registration, my central excise and my service tax all are linked so that one registration is only there in practice. So I have a foundation of providing all my existing registrations here, even though I am starting with my VAT registration. Yes.
Yeah, suppose in case of proprietorship concern, within West Bengal, if I am having 10 branches, say Durgapur under or whatever, and head office is in Calcutta. So they are giving right now the VAT, even the name of the business. Suppose 3 businesses are there under one single VAT registration. They are allowing single VAT number. You have to file all the consolidated at one place.
Right.
Suppose A limited or say A proprietorship and B proprietorship is there.
Right.
The name is different,
Right.
but the VAT number is one
Right.
now.
Right.
Now, if I am going to register, if my Asansol unit is say A proprietorship concern and here Calcutta is B proprietorship, so which name should I put? And because I am having one password from the VAT department and one ID.
Right.
Now, if I register, what will happen to my another business? That is
Okay. So first of all, sir, I think your question is with regard to two proprietorship concerns.
Yeah.
They're registered in the same state,
Yeah.
and with regard to that proprietorship registration, what should be exactly?
But because they are giving one VAT team.
So even now, GST is supposed to be PAN based. So let's not just talk about West Bengal. Let's talk about the whole country. I might be having 20 different proprietorship concerns throughout the country.
Right, different name.
Yeah, but still, the registration is supposed to be PAN based, right?
Okay.
I am supposed to have a different state code, that's a different story, but registration is supposed to be PAN based, completely PAN based.
The name of the business, which name?
So name of the business in case of a proprietorship concern, if there are multiple units, I think there has to be the proprietor's name has to be given.
Only proprietor.
So the legal name has to be the proprietor's name. When it comes to the PAN card also, even for all these businesses, we have only one PAN card, right?
So Ram and Company proprietor, he will give the
But-
only Ram Sharma name,
Yes, sir, absolutely.
not Ram and Company.
He cannot give that, sir, because legal name means the name which is there as per the PAN.
Only proprietor.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Details of principal and additional places of business. All the places of business needs to be declared here. Whether it is in the same state or a different state. And I need to make sure I obtain a separate registration for each of these places of business. I need to specify the nature of activity at each of these places. Nature of activity means, for example, a wholesaler or a trader or a service provider, service recipient or a warehouse or a factory. Everything needs to be specified here in the nature of activity. Goods and or services. Now this is a little tricky because we need to give the HSN code of the goods which we are supplying, which was there only in the excise. Now the government has not brought in any exemption for this. So I don't know how many people would be able to fill this up, because under VAT registration a lot of people have been filling up miscellaneous commodities as their major product they are supplying. So this again is a very big issue here, and you have to fill this up very carefully, because on the basis of this you will be filing your return. Only these outward supplies are allowed to be made. You have to declare all the goods and services that you are supplying here itself. With services, again you have the SAC code, which we similar to what we have under service tax, so that's not a very big issue because all of us are having our SAC codes. But with regard to goods, I think it is a little bit of an issue. Yes, sir?
Regarding this existing registrations, you said keep all the units. Suppose we have got two factories in the same state.
Right, sir.
We have to give details for both the factories.
Absolutely,
the
sir.
central excise registration numbers.
Absolutely, sir.
Now, suppose in an example, one of the factories is not functioning.
Right,
The registration certificate has already been surrendered.
right, sir.
But no order has been received from the department as
Right,
yet.
sir.
What happens in that case?
So again, you have to go back to the department, apply for cancellation, make sure the department actually agrees to it, and you actually prove that there are no operations going on. This again is a very tedious process, similar to what we have today.
So right now, see, the department is not going to solve it within the next 10 days.
Absolutely.
Then what is to be done? So should we provide?
I'll talk about cancellation of registration. So from your part, if you have applied for a cancellation when you know that your business has closed at that particular place, your part is over. It is up to the department now to make sure that they cancel your certificate. It's your prerogative, you've already taken care of, right? So now you don't have to think about
Running
anything.
unit, I will put the registration for the running unit.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And the second thing, the problem which I am facing is, for a body corporate, they are saying it's mandatory to give the SIN.
Right.
But once the SIN number is given and the documents are uploaded, it's still showing an error. The SIN number is mandatory.
So SIN number, I think I uploaded, there was no issue. I don't know if there's a
I think there might be some system
particular issue. I think you please recheck your SIN number, because SIN number I uploaded, I had no issue with that.
But the SIN number has to be given.
Yes, sir. MCA registration has to be given with regard to a company.
And that has to be the SIN number. No?
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir.
Sir, regarding HSN, if I want to add some more goods which I have not entered at the time of registration, then what will happen?
I don't think that will be allowed, sir. Until unless you can amend your certificate, right? If you want to supply anything later on, you can amend your
Suppose at the
certificate.
time of registering myself, I have given 100 HSNs in my.
They are not taking more than 5, I think. More than 5 is not allowed.
Right now, there are limited fields which, with regard to HSN codes. In future, let's see how many they can take.
Because as far as my company is concerned, we are supplying at least 50 to 60 HSN.
So again, we'll have to see if all the fields are populated. This is the initial phase of the GST portal, right? So the GST portal, how it develops in future, how many they can take, again is a question which we need to see when it develops over time, the portal. It's just the enrollment phase right now, right?
Only up to enrollment.
So again, there you will get a lot of time, right? Till April there will be a lot of changes in this portal. You can still make all these adjustments. You can upload all the HSN codes by then. So right now, let's just wait and see here how many you can upload. You should upload right now. That's it.
Regarding registration, you are saying after 6 months you can go for cancellation, okay? That is the cancellation. Because suppose if I am having 11 lakh turnover, having VAT registration.
Right.
So whether mandatorily I should register or not? If I
So,
register
yeah.
and then after 6 months, you are saying that then by April, if GST comes into picture, then should I make the bill with GST or not? I am intending to cancel it. But I am registered.
Okay, so
Till
we'll
time
be
I am not
just talking
cancelled.
about that in some time. But since you've asked it, I'll just reply right now. So what happens is, let's say you're not applicable to GST in future, but you're applicable in the current tax.
Right.
You cannot surrender your registration today,
Right.
right? In that case, you will be mandatorily issued a GST provisional certificate,
Right.
and you have to go through this process of enrollment. After that, there is a form called GST REG 24.
Right.
You need to fill up that form, and in that form you will have to write that I am not liable to registration because of these reasons. In that case, if government finds it fit, then it will be deemed that the provisional certificate has never been issued to you.
Right. That is 24. I can file before 6 months.
Absolutely, sir. It has to be
Anytime,
filed before 6 months
anytime,
itself.
anytime.
Anytime after 1st of April, if it kicks in from 1st of April.
After first of
Absolutely. Because right now, GST is not there. So again, your provisional ID will stay migrated till that date.
Right.
And you cannot opt for out of registration right now because you're liable to VAT, right? You cannot
So
opt.
if it comes into picture in 1st April, and if they gives the option to cancel it on 10th April, if my sales in between
No. You won't be liable to GST. It will be deemed that you have never been registered under
from
GST.
1st April.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
In my VAT registration, at present, in my VAT registration or my service size registration or my excise registration, I don't have any additional place of business.
Okay.
But while migrating, I want to add additional place of business because now I have started a new branch office or something. So can I add that?
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Again, you will have to upload the necessary documents for that. Even now, when it comes to GST registration, all the necessary documents with regard to every place of business needs to be given. Be it the principal place of business or the additional place of business. If you can prove that it's an additional place of business, no problem. You can always add it when you want.
So all the registration certificates are to be uploaded too.
So registration certificate needs to be downloaded. They'll be given by the government too.
The details which we have.
Absolutely, all the existing
All the
registrations.
registration certificates are to be uploaded.
All the not the registration certificates, only the registration numbers of each certificate. Registration certificate is only one, which is regard to the constitution of business that you need to upload.
Okay. No other central excise registration certificate.
So just one by one. Sorry.
Central excise registration certificate, these need not be
No.
uploaded.
Yes, sir.
What about the proprietorship constitution of business?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
What about the proprietorship business?
Proprietorship, I think trade license should be sufficient because that's again a proof of your constitution of business. Alright? Yes?
Is it advisable to do the slotting for VAT, both the partial to those who are having VAT, service tax and excise? So can we be after 15 any time of the service tax opens?
So if you're registered, what I got from your question was you're registered under VAT, service tax, everything, right? So right now I think you should start